Good evening and welcome to the Belfast Bapcast. Tonight we have on Richard Vobes. He is former BBC radio presenter, I believe, yes. And he,
Well, I wouldn't say I was a former, but I did a BBC course and I have worked on the BBC and ITV and all the different channels, but not as anything significant.
okay,
You can
okay.
get into that a little bit later, perhaps.
You author and starter of the Bald Explorer. So before YouTube was, we say, in vogue, you were already sort of on it long before anybody else. So just getting stuck straight into things, your journey has been a very interesting one. From exploring England to exploring sovereignty to now uh, living off the land. So just tell us a wee bit about, yeah, how that started. And
Yeah, certainly. Well, thank you, Mark, for letting me come on your show. It's very kind of you. Yes, the I I have worked in television on ITV in the 1990s, where I put together a pilot for a children's show, and it was accepted. And we worked with Scottish Television, of all places, and we produced this kids program, which went across the ITV network at 4 o'clock on Thursdays for part of the children's television thing. It was called Snug and Cozy, and it was about two aliens, bald-headed aliens, who crash land on the Earth and decide to try and make it their home. And really and truly, it was Laurel and Hardy in spacesuits. That's how I would sell the thing.
okay,
And in my childhood, I like many people of my age, I was brought up in the 60s and 70s. We're brought up on things like Thunderbirds, and all the sort of Jerry Anderson shows, and some of the other shows like the Persuaders, the Professionals, all those sort of key programs, which for me was the golden age of television. And as a youngster, I thought that's what I want to do. I want to get into telly. I want to be an actor. And also, I was interested in filming. So I wanted to also film and direct and all of that. And the opportunity to do that didn't come until, as I say, in the 1990s, where I put together this pilot. But I learned very quickly that television is not the nice, happy place that everybody thinks it is. And in fact, there was a lot of backstabbing, there was a lot of corruption and fraudulent activity. At nothing sexual or anything that I saw going on, but there was definitely huge egos, and it was all about money. And at
yeah,
the end of the time that we had two children's series in the 90s. Funnily enough, the second series went out when Lady Diana had a slight accident in an underpass in Paris, which moved our slot, which was annoying. So I've got a beef about that with her if ever
it
I
was
see her.
very inconsiderate of her, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, very inconsiderate, if you ask
yeah,
me. And so I decided that television really wasn't going to be the answer for me, and YouTube was coming up as this sort of potential, excuse me. And I thought, why don't I make the programs I want to make directly for the public rather than having to go through television producers who always were in the way with the wrong ideas. So I figured that would be it. But of course, television has a budget, whereas I didn't.
yeah,
So I figured, what could I film that could be interesting to a section of society? And I thought, well, England's a pretty jolly old place. Why don't I walk around England, film walks, film heritage, landscape, and nature, and talk about it? And hence the Bald Explorer was born. And so I have done that for a fair few years. And they went from long format shows because I thought that's what would work. And then I realized something that took 3 months to make and only 10 people watched was probably not the way to do it. It took about a year to realize that. So in the
yeah.
end, I started to do a daily video of a walk, which was very simple with a GoPro on a gimbal at first until stabilization came in, and just take the viewer on a walk, which worked very well.
Yeah. And then that evolved into well, monologues at first, and then sort of interviews and one thing or
Absolutely.
another.
Yeah, I had done a lot of these walks and gone around the country a fair bit. And I was running out, I suppose, of ideas of places to go because I needed to continually go further, which meant putting petrol into the car, staying overnight, and it all suddenly was costing a lot of money. And the return from YouTube isn't great unless you have lots and lots of viewers. Now, I've got over 3,000 subscribers, but I'm demonetized because of various things that were said on the channel. But go back to back then when I had about 20,000 subscribers after sort of 5 or 6 years of doing this, and it still wasn't making a lot of money. And I thought maybe I'll just change tact. And I started to talk about, in a very soft initial way, about the things that were going on. We'd all gone through COVID, and I'd been very critical about the speed of the vaccine, why the vaccine was needed, why we needed to lock down, all those sort of questions that I thought everybody would be asking. And I was staggered that actually the majority of people weren't asking those questions. In fact, they were telling me to shut up for asking those questions, which I found a bit weird. And so as I started my monologues, more and more people who seemed to be like me were saying, go on, Richard, keep going, ask more of these questions and see where it goes. And then I started to interview people who seemed to have something to bring to the table. And they were a whole host of variety of different people, from money creation to health to spirituality to sovereignty, payment or non-payment of council tax, and so on and so forth. And that brought me to a point where, after 3 years of doing that, I figured, actually, it's all very well talking about this stuff. I need to actually do something now, because I felt the solutions needed to be done rather than,
Talked
find the
about them.
solutions. Yeah. And
So
so that's what I'm doing now.
I've really enjoyed the sort of latest direction in your channel and the English couple and stuff with um returning to the land, and the sort of overall ethos of nobody's coming to rescue you, so it's time to start looking out for yourself. And that's something that I very much believe in. Yes, we have migrant crisis and whatever not else going on in the country, but um we can do very little to nothing to actually affect any change on that level. We can, however, make our own environment and our own lifestyle better, in the immediate terms, and worry about the things that we can actually change, even within our immediate community. If we
Mm.
happen, I live within a city, so I live in East Belfast here, and we're trying a few initiatives through the shop, where we're trying to like feed the homeless and feed the elderly, and the community is funding it, and it's working very well. So I would class that as an act of sovereignty, where we're sort of just ignoring NGOs, the need for governmental bodies, and just feeding people.
Well, I mean, that's very laudable what you're doing, of course, and more people should do it. But I absolutely agree that that is an act of sovereignty. It's a good two-fingered salute to these organisations which cream off the profits and don't really get down to attending to what's really needed. So I certainly admire what you're doing, and I think it's right that we do need to take responsibility for ourselves. We, as a nation, I suppose, or as a number of countries, have got very used to somebody else, and usually some form of authority, saying, don't worry, we'll do that for you. And they've taken away our power. And then when that power has gone and you want to do things for yourself, you've forgotten how to do it. You don't even know that you actually have the right to do it. And you're always at the mercy. And it's a bit like a drug dealer, that once he stops the drug, you start to go cold turkey. And so I feel a lot of people are beginning to feel the heat, that things are expensive. Food is too expensive now. Cost of living is expensive. Rates, rent, mortgages, council tax, ordinary tax, any kind of tax. And if we continually just let these people muck about with everything, it's all going to go tits up, basically. And it's time that we started to think, what can I do for myself now that doesn't rely on these people who are charging me a fortune to do things that I could actually do myself?
Yeah, I feel if we aim for autonomy as much as possible, because they're going to do what they want to do regardless. So it's sort of navigating that system and finding freedom within it, really, isn't it? And you
I
know,
agree. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, it's not, some people think, well, that's a very selfish attitude that you're just looking after yourself. But of course, as communities start to do more of this, or individuals start to do this, they build communities and say, look, I can do this. Maybe I can help you. I'll scratch your back if you'll scratch my back. And we don't need these guys who have titles and work for corporations or public authorities. We can just deal amongst ourselves,
yeah.
which is a great way of not having to pay the government any extra for the exchange of goods and services.
And it's amazing that in 2026 it's taken us all this time to realize that old school actually rules,
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that's right.
the barter system. And, you know, to me, all this is sort of clearly by design, whether you want to blame the Tavistock Institute or whoever. But the father was socially engineered out of the household, the nuclear family was destroyed, then the community was destroyed, and then the culture was destroyed, and then any sort of ability to form cohesion was destroyed. And it really is on us to build that back up, because we were the suckers that allowed it to happen because it was incremental.
Yes, we've been the frog that has been in the pot slowly warming up, and but it's amazing how many people can't feel the hot water. I mean, yourself, your community, myself, my viewers, etc. We're beginning to really know that the water is too hot to exist in. But you look around and everyone else may be sweating and steaming, but they still don't realize the hot water is continuing and that it's time to get out of the pot.
Well, I think a lot more in this country are realizing it currently, because the local MLAs, MPs are pushing for is it a 14% pay rise? Whilst there is 75,000 to 110,000 residents reported as homeless in crash beds, or, it's a bit topsy turvy. And at the same time, they have housed and clothed and fed 5,300 and something asylum seekers, while their own country members lie on the street. It makes zero sense. And when it when it is like that, it is up to you to take responsibility for your own sphere, isn't it? Because you're not going to be able to change that system from within. So starting a political party, or putting hope in reform, or putting hope in Robert Lowe, or sorry, Rupert Lowe, whoever's the latest, face that they're going to put in front of us. I believe he's very good intentioned and all the rest, but you're not going to change a corrupt system from.
No, I mean it's very interesting seeing what he's saying, but and I wouldn't be interested in voting for any political party because I don't believe in that system.
No.
However, it's interesting that he has stood up and said what many British people and long-term British people, a lot of people who've come from overseas call themselves British now,
Yeah.
but a lot of the traditional British people, shall we say, would agree with and start to think. So even if, as he says, it would take a long time, and I think that all of his policies would take a long time to reverse what's gone on, because let's face it, they've taken decades to
To
implement.
implement. Yeah.
But we can, if that starts to get people thinking, even the fact that it's possible, then we should get on the back of that, not necessarily to be part of the political system, but to say, yeah, actually, it is time to think about the traditions, the customs, the way of life that has been eroded, and the common sense, the critical thinking that we once had, and bring that back. And we can do that individually
Yeah.
and in small groups.
And I've interviewed a few guys that deal in the sovereignty universe. And I'm very split on the whole thing. Like I get it, I understand like the 12 assumptions of law, and I understand jurisdiction and your. But to me, sovereignty is like self autonomy. Like if I don't want to do something, I won't do it, and I'll accept the consequences. I'm not about to go and start writing letters and wait for non-replies, and that then is a binding contract. I just won't do it. To me, that's freedom.
Mm.
That's sovereignty. Worrying about, to me, you know, most people are not living in a way that you should be having to interact with the authorities that much anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, no, I mean, I totally agree, and I think a lot of people are continually being pushed to worry about things which may or may not happen, and they're not living in the moment and thinking, let's just get on with it. Let's just ignore all of this nonsense. And the more, of course, the more people that do that and just get on with it, it will encourage further people to do the same until there comes a point where those people with the big sticks and the so-called power and the comedy outfits and uniforms won't be able to do anything because there'll be enough people just saying, "Look at you guys, you're stuck in the old system. We're living, and you're not." And you do feel that once there would be a tipping point where even those people would ditch the truncheons and the comedy wigs and all of that and join the rest of them once they've realised that they're stuck as drones rather than as real people living and doing things which makes them thrive, happy, and enjoy life.
I think that this class is also more than happy for channels like yours and channels like mine to go down all these different rabbit holes to keep people in perpetual inquiry and or heightened sense of fear when really you could just be getting on with.
This is exactly what I was finding after 2 years. The initial 2 years was going down the rabbit hole, sharing what I found listening to the interviewees that I had on the show. And then I started to think, well, I could sit and do this for the rest of my life because there's going to be a never ending so-called rabbit holes with all sorts of variations of funny things going on that you suddenly get very excited about. Oh, look at this. This is another thing. And then I just thought, but that's not really living. We need solutions to these. So I spent a year then talking about the potential solutions, of which was being responsible for ourselves. And then at the end of last year, not last year, the year before last, I thought, do you know what? I've got to, stop just talking about this, even talking about the solutions. I've got to do it.
Yeah,
And one of the things we wanted to do was to get some land, start growing, and just be in peace with ourselves, be as self-sufficient as we can, things that we could share, that would be great, and barter and exchange, and just enjoy the life that we've been blessed with in this incredible world. And so that's where my partner, the lovely Julia, and I thought, well, yeah, I'm getting out of this YouTube rat race. We'll try and inspire people. I mean, I'm 62 and everyone says, you're too old. You're too old to do this. And I'm saying, nonsense. Why am I too old? Look, I'm doing it. And if that helps other people by sharing what we're doing, and we know we're making mistakes, and that doesn't matter, we're
that's how you
thriving.
learn.
Exactly.
That's how you learn.
But so many people, I mean, we have comments from people who, will say, I've been 25 years as a carpenter. I've never seen such rubbish, you building those workshops and stuff. And you think, yep, this is year one for me. So I
Yeah,
will make those mistakes, you fool.
and I mean, even with the mistakes, I'm sure in year one you're still proud of the. You know what I mean? It's a pretty big step. It's not as if you can just learn carpentry overnight, or even
Abs-
nurturing a plant.
yeah.
It's not as straightforward as sticking something in the ground and it's going to grow. There's a whole process involved, and
And I think that's the thing is that we don't have big expectations to succeed straight away. We would like to think that in 5 to 10 years we've got a bit of a handle on it and that we've got some experience. But at first we're not expecting things to sprout out of the, and if it does, that's a bonus. But it's the joy of being outside for us in all weathers, especially some of this rain we've had the
Yeah,
last
it's been
three
horrible.
months. But it's actually the challenge because we're challenging ourselves. And whilst we still have a small window of time to sort of grow food, let's get on with it and see where we go.
So, would you say that, you know, that like once upon a time, everybody would have had the skill to live off the land and to grow and all the rest? I would say it's pretty intentional that we are at the state and stage that we are at in humanity where, we can't even travel to the next town without sat nav.
Absolutely. I mean, it is astonishing how people do not know where they are if their sat nav breaks down and they have no concept of it. And of course, those people old enough to have had maps will have had a different way of working out, oh, I'm here, I've got to get to there. These towns are north of me. Even if I get lost, I'll aim for that city and then find. And also, you can wind down a window and ask somebody
Yeah, that
something,
is the
you
old
know,
school. But
that
obviously,
is.
men can't ask for directions, Richard. It's against the law.
Well, the other thing is people, they either don't have the directions.
Or
That's the
give
other
you the
thing is
wrong
they don't
ones.
know, or they give you too detailed directions that you can't remember it. But this is the problem, and you're absolutely right, of course, that it has been a orchestrated problem that the younger generation now are so fixed on screens with the endorphins and the habit, the drug-like habit that keeps them stuck behind a 2D screen in a digital world and really have no notion of what the big world that we inhabit and that people of a certain age grew up with, where a phone call meant going to the telephone box and putting tuppence in, or 10 pence if you could afford it for a slightly longer conversation. They're on their phone texting like nobody's business or WhatsApping and all those things with no concept of the real world. And it's very, very sad. And in many ways, I think it is this last generation who have got to somehow inspire those to put down those tablets and phones and devices, even if it is only for an hour, to get their hands in the earth or that get their hands on spanners
Well, the
or to.
younger generation seem to feel something because there's like record numbers of like young people joining spiritual movements, churches, all the rest. Like people are seeking something. They know that there's more to life than this vacuous plastic that we're presented with of Instagram and
Well,
Facebook and
yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's it's very encouraging, really, because it's almost as if those that have orchestrated this have forgotten that the human psyche or the spirit, the soul that inhabits us cannot be completely captured. And even though they may not know quite what they want, they may not know how to thrive, there's a sense that something's not right and it's missing. And as you say, they're joining the spiritual things. And let's hope that helps to funnel them to find the joy in life.
yeah, and it is a journey. I mean, nobody's born with the answers, but something I've always been intrigued about since watching is all your background increments. So
Oh, you mean my
your
literal background?
yeah, your props. So
Yeah,
uh, can you talk me through some of them? So I get just
yes, no, absolutely. Well, because I'm old school and was brought up in the 60s and 70s, of course, I'm from the analog world. And I thought it was important to just surround myself in the homemade studio, which is actually the master bedroom of my two up, two down terraced house. It's if you saw the rest of the house, you'd see the crumbling plaster and you'd see some of the unfurnished bits. But of course, the camera never lies.
yeah.
So I've got a couple of wireless sets that an ex-publican gave me, which was great. I've been meaning to put little lights in them so they could actually light up. Hang on, I'll see if I can move so that you can sort of see them in the background. They're just over there.
Yeah,
Um, the Because the Revox tape recorder is in the background. I wish it worked. I
yeah,
would
that's
have
the
it
favorite.
going around.
I like that
Um,
one.
I got that many years ago when I was making um, amateur films, and also recording audio podcasts and things like that. But I've had that for donkey's years. And then what else have we got? We've got
Is that a
an old
monitor down
lamp.
in your bottom?
We've got what? Sorry.
Is that a monitor behind you on the other side?
Oh,
Underneath Cash's King?
underneath cash. Where's Cash's King? Oh, that's actually a briefcase.
All right, okay.
It's just it's a briefcase I used to, because I used to do mime, and I would do a thing with a briefcase.
Right,
Well,
okay.
hang on, I'll see if I can show you. Hang on, bear with. I won't be able to hear you, but bear with me. And I might be a bit out of focus because the camera's sort of fixed focus, but we'll see
Yeah, no worries.
if I can do it. with my- So there's the briefcase. Let me move that out of the way. And I would make it patient. So I would do all this mime stuff. Whoops. Anyway, been a long time, but it found a home in the studio. Sorry about all the noise there.
It's like
So yes,
riding.
I trained at mime school many, many years ago in my early 20s. So I
So
do all this sort of mime
you've had
wall stuff.
quite a checkered past then.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was it all leading towards wanting to get into TV and film, like everything you've done sort of like from leaving school, or
I left school at 15. I didn't want to go into further education, and I'm so pleased I didn't. And at the time, all I wanted to do was perform. I said to my careers teacher when I was 15, who previously to the interview with him, he was a science teacher, but suddenly overnight he transformed into a careers teacher. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be an actor or a film director." And I suppose to some degree, I have managed to do those things. And now, of course, they're all very ego based. Now I want to be true to the inner self, I suppose, or my higher self, my soul, my spirit, whatever, and grow, sit with nature, puff my pipe, enjoy the company of my beautiful girlfriend, and take time to be.
so? Talk to me about when you discovered that you were good at writing books.
Um, I don't know that I am good at writing books as such. I've
I
always written. I've had a passion for writing ever since I was a kid. I was writing. I used to watch these television series, as I mentioned earlier, and I would write episodes of my own things and send them off. And of course, they all came back. And I wrote one which was a children's series in 6 parts, an adventure series, because I was fed up with some of the television that kids were being given, like the Chuckle Brothers, and I thought we could yeah, I thought I could do so much better. So I wrote these adventure stories, which were, you know, very expensive. I mean, they were more film-like. And I sent a script into Yorkshire Television, and I was 18 at the time, and they invited me up. And they said, "We've looked at your script. You know, we love the audacity of you doing it." And they invited me up and showed me how television was made in a studio with 6 sets and a script that basically was just all talking heads, and because the budgets were so low.
Yeah.
And they said, and they introduced me to a director and other writers. And at 18, of course, I was exposed to all this knowledge about how to work in television. But at 18, I thought I knew it all. So I didn't want to do any of the things they said. I still wanted to say, yeah, but you know, kids like to see people fall down or rockets take off or big car chases, and you know, they want what the grown-ups get, only for them. And so, of course, it took me a long time to realize that wasn't the way to do it. Later on, I started to write some children's books, which were high adventure, but trying to get anything published in this day and age is a nightmare. Plus the fact that kids aren't reading. You know, they're reading very strange, woke stuff. That's what they're
Yeah.
being given these days. And then after my series of interviews over the last 3 years, I thought, what can I do? I want to move on and go into the land and do my thing. what can I, how can I encapsulate all that I've learned? And I thought I'll write a book. And so I wrote this book called 𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐽. It's a fiction, 𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐽, the town that wouldn't comply. And I figured within a fiction, you could put truth bombs in and people can accept them or not. And you could, the truther movement can read the book and read the story of this town that decides it doesn't want net zero policies, it doesn't like the 17 sustainable goals, it doesn't want 5G towers, it doesn't want fluoride in the water, it doesn't want sexualization of children in the school system, it thinks the council tax is fraudulent, all these sort of things. And so a number of people suffer different things, bailiffs at the door, eviction, and all these things that are going on in the story. And I figured that the truther movement will read it and go, oh, he's got that in. No, he's got that in. Bloody hell. And he's got that in. But you could also give that to people who were not aware of these things, and they would be reading it going, well, that's a pile of rubbish. That's a pile of rubbish. Oh, that happened to my mother. Oh, and that's something that happened to my neighbour. I wonder if the other stuff has any credibility. And of course, it's got stuff about vaccines and
I think
mythological.
𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐽 is more like a representation of what society would be if everybody spoke their mind. You know, most people are normal.
Yeah.
Most people do think in common sense terms. Most people do not want to be governed over tyrannically. Most people do want autonomy. And, you know, if 𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐶𝐽 would be like if, you know, a lot of people with enough balls to do it got together in the one town, you know, because what I found, like I've been in a few scandals in Belfast where I've ended up in the newspaper for saying one thing or another um, that the woke community didn't agree with. And I found that if you didn't give a fuck and didn't apologize, that nothing happened.
Well, exactly. I mean, one of the things in the book that it pivots on is we're always saying what we don't want. We don't want this and we don't want that, or we're unhappy with this and we grumble about that. Very rarely do we say what we do want. What kind of society do we want? And we don't push those ideas because I think at the end of the day, pretty much all of us want very similar things. We want a simple life. We don't want to be bullied and mucked about. We want people to be honest with each other, and we want people to be allowed to follow their dreams. And you know, so I think there's a lot that we can agree on if the right people got together. So I positioned this as a very small, out of the way rural town so that if you could get enough people together and they turn around and say, actually, we don't want any of this. What this is what we do want, and that was more important. What do you want? Then people started to actually come together because there's a lot of things I think we can agree on a fundamental level of what we want, rather than being blinded by certain narratives such as climate change and
Yeah, well,
so on.
I feel we entirely play into their narratives, and that's why I've loved the journey to see you moving from, you know, talking about the theory of things to talking about solutions to actually taking action, because it's, you know, as I've said to Guy Anderson in previous interviews, it's, you know, it's just intellectual masturbation otherwise, you know, unless you're actually doing something to progress this idea, you're just going down endless rabbit holes for no reason other than to be stuck inside a paradigm that you think is outside the paradigm that they've also put that paradigm there within which for you to play. You know,
Yes.
if they did not want you to know this information, it would not be available. Simple.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I felt that is what we have to do. So although this room looks like the normal studio that I used to have, I've actually pared it right down. And behind the camera that I'm looking in to talk to you, I have, I don't know how many now, a good 50, 60, 80 potatoes chitting away. Let me grab a few. They're all laid out in where the main lights and stuff was. So I have a whole load of potatoes which we're aiming to plant in March, mid-March, and they're already starting to sprout.
Yeah.
Um, and so where I was just concentrating, sorry, a bit away from the microphone, where I was concentrating on the interviews and all the rest of it. Now, even the home space is backing up what we're trying to do on the land by getting our potatoes ready. And and it's just fun. It's fun watching nature doing its thing.
You really have to almost make something an obsession to get it off the ground, though. I find,
Yeah.
all your energy has to be poured into it, and that's why, it was totally understandable taking a bit of a step back from the YouTube side of things because real world was going on.
Exactly, and it's very easy to, as I think you just alluded to be wrapped up in this sandpit of YouTube and making videos and feeling that what you're saying is really important, especially when YouTube is curtailing who these sees these videos in the first place, and you're just talking to an echo chamber of people who are quite happy to carry on watching but not actually doing.
Yeah,
Um,
and the fact
and
that you
that's
got in Biggleswick to the what people want instead of just what you're annoyed about. That's all you ever seem to hear about is people's grievances. There's never anybody walking about with solutions or what makes them happy in life, or it's always the doom and the gloom.
The sad part, of course, was when we started talking about the so-called conspiracies. Yes, the news today that was yesterday's conspiracy. When we started talking about the audience figures were going up and the amount of people who watched the videos was extremely high. When I started to suggest we should be talking about the solutions to get out of the problems that are coming at us, the audience figures dropped quite dramatically. Now I'm on the land and doing things. It's even less, and it is a strange thing that people would rather be in fear than actually be inspired and to get up and do stuff.
Well, I think I find inspiration from it because that's a state where pretty much the same stage where I'm at in life. I'm 86 days sober. Had a spiritual awakening, came to Jesus, all the rest. And as I started doing stuff within the community, and I'm starting to feel what actual real world solutions feel like. And
Yes.
it's a lot better than the intellectual masturbation of conspiracy rabbit holes. And as interesting as they are, and as much truth and as much substance to all these different theories as there is, unless it's providing you with a better quality of life, a better state of mind, or what's the point?
Yeah. Well, I've often had debates with my friend Guy Anderson, as you mentioned earlier, and said, all this Tartarian stuff, it's fascinating.
Oh,
But
it
where
is,
does it
yeah.
take us? Where does it take us now? How does it help us? Um, and I mean that's his interest, and that's all very laudable. Of course, I'm not
Yeah.
against that at all, and it's fascinating, and it makes you think, and all of those things. But there comes a point for me where, okay, that's fine, but I need to put those interests to one side because I've got people I
Stuff to
need to
do.
feed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, though, it's how you interact with it as well. So, for example, I would get up every day and Guy Norton shares a post on Facebook, something to do with Tartaria or it could be music industry or whatever. And I always read it and I always find things that get fascinating, but I'm not attaching emotion to these things anymore. I'm just,
Mm.
yeah, I'm taking it as literally data. That's that's it. And getting on with real life.
Yes, because I mean, in the end, all these sort of things becomes a bit like a soap. It's happening somewhere on the internet. So many of these videos where it's showing people being evicted or being charged for a car offence with the police and all this, and it starts to become a bit of a soap, and you get drawn in when actually there's some holes to be dug, potatoes to be planted, and then in a few months' time you'll be eating the produce. For me, It's like I haven't got time to sit and watch these things. And actually, I'm gravitating more to an old habit that I used to do, and that was read. I
Mm.
get much more from reading books, and it's a much more pleasant, quieter, thoughtful occupation than reacting. Oh God, look at that! That's terrible. Oh no, I've got to share that with a
Yeah,
thousand friends.
and you get to also create the scenery as well when you're reading.
Exactly, exactly. You're
You're
dressing the
engaging,
characters. You're
you're
building the
engaging,
scenery.
and that's yeah, it's a lost art as well. Same as handwriting.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Handwriting is something that like anytime that I go to write, it's ridiculous. It's because we're so used to typing in the phones or typing in the computer, and I think also once again by design because there's something very much in that writing something down and like there's a connection, like for example a to-do list, and ticking it off, just something as simple as
But
that.
I mean, the sense of excitement if you get a handwritten letter from someone. I remember as a young man receiving handwritten letters. Of course, that was all the communication you had other than expensive telephones from young ladies. And you'd have the smell of the perfume and the imagination that would go with all of that as you open those things. A text is not the same, and a
uh,
photo of somebody's private parts really doesn't do it anymore.
no,
You're
the
not.
Dick Van Dyke pics are are not are not appropriate. But
Uh,
so what would you say has been the biggest learning curve on the land for you so far?
the biggest learning curve on the land is actually, I think, what do I think? Hang on, it's a very good question to ask at this stage. I think the enormity and the respect that you have for nature, that actually nature does so much for you, and we've been conditioned to fight nature. We're trying to, get rid of the weeds from between the paving stones. We're killing off the food that we eat with various chemicals so we can harvest them quickly, and there's all these products that have been served us. And I suppose the biggest lesson I've learned is watching nature, and how nature will drop, say, an apple on the ground, and in its own time it will do what it needs to do, cover it with leaves in the autumn so that it has the mulch already. And I think there's a lot that we can learn by seeing what nature does. It doesn't do things in straight lines.
Whenever
It
you describe things like that, do you not think it's then a wee bit insane that people think that that started from a big bang, that there's
Yes.
no intelligent design behind that? Everything works so symbiotically that it's not possible to come out of chaos. It makes no sense.
No, I agree. I agree. There is something that is there, and of course, do you feel that same connection with living matter, whether that's the earth itself, because the earth is abundant with all sorts of bugs and things and seeds, the earthworms, right up to the majesty of trees. There's not so much of that majesty and connection within an electronic house with screens, LED lights, and artificial foods that we're given. And I think our salvation is to reconnect with this wonderful planet that we're on and blessed with, that we've been ignoring for so long.
Have you noticed any change in your overall mood or well-being since sort of disconnecting a wee bit from the digital world?
I could sit outside and just enjoy. You don't have to work all day long. I mean, that's the thing, people keep telling you, oh, but working on the land is hard work. It's all this, that, and the other. The reward is stopping, feeling the aching bones and the muscles, and sitting there. For me, I enjoy smoking a pipe and just going, look at it. It's
Yeah.
just wonderful. And there's no EMFs, There's no radiation. Luckily, we're nowhere near a 5G mast or anything, so we can't even attribute anything to that. And it's our own work.
Yeah. And there's something beautiful within that. And, you've nurtured it from seed
Yeah.
to table.
A-
And,
And it doesn't have to be perfect. It is perfect in its non-perfect state.
well, nothing in this world is perfect. We can certainly aim for perfection to get the best as possible. But, as you say, it's year one for you. And I mean, obviously, so far, the journey, you've enjoyed it. And you're clearly getting a lot more out of it than it's taken out of you. So that's
Uh,
always a good
It's a
sign.
big plus, a very big plus. Yes.
So where can people get your new book, Biggleswick?
Biggleswick. Now I have taken a ridiculous step because I didn't want to put it on the big retailers, the online retailers, the one that's named after a large river, or anything like that, because they're big corporations, and the book itself slates those big corporations and is all about the independent, family-run, individual small businesses and people who want to follow their dreams.
Yeah.
So I have had printed a number of books myself, which I've paid for. So people can only get the book through me directly. And the best way to do that is to email me, Richard at Vobes, VOBES.com. And I'll send an email back to say, this is how you can pay for it. And I'll sign it. Everyone gets it's a hardback copy. It's stitched with a proper fly sheet. So it's none of your Amazon quick print on demand rubbish. Beautifully printed. I'll sign it, put a personal message on the fly sheet, and it's made out to them, so it becomes a unique thing. And that's what you can do when you do those things. You take responsibility for yourself. You can make that item special for the person who's buying it, and I hope that they will read it, pass it on to friends and family. And I also put the date so that in years to come they'll go, oh yes, it was February 9, 2026 when that bald idiot sent me the book.
Yeah, and I think sentiment is something that people have also lost in a big way. You
Yes.
know, like signed books or like even I used to have like the first Bible my granny bought me, something like that. There, like all those things are very near and dear, but you don't really see or hear.
With everything being digital now, the printed matter, or even as we talked about, handwritten matter and letters and things. When and if a big magnet was switched on and everything was taken away, people's photos on their phones, all those things can disappear. And yet we know that photography's been around for over 100 years or more, and they're still here.
Yeah,
Those old snaps that I took when I was a kid, I can look back at those and they're still here and they have visceral meaning. Whereas I never go back and scroll through anything. I've taken pictures on my phone. They're just too utilitarian.
I remember my parents having people round for slideshows.
Yes. Yes. That's my dad would do the same. Get out the old
Yeah,
projector, put down those things. And
and I
you,
mean, like it was the most embarrassing hour to 2 hours if
yes, that's
you're
true
with.
as a kid.
But now looking back, obviously it's through like romantic eyes. Those things were actually good. Like those sort of connections seem to have very much disappeared in life, and obviously you've went from inquiry to trying to get back to it, and I'm trying to do the same myself and trying to encourage others to do the same themselves. Because if we're waiting around for help from the government or from anyone outside of your immediate sphere of influence, you're going to be waiting a very long time because
Absolutely.
we're in a very selfish point in history, and you should
But in
start.
many ways, we've had to get to this point. I feel that, as much as one can look at it and say, oh, this is unfair, we shouldn't be in this situation, the trajectory that the human race was on was really only to the edge of a cliff. And I feel that people like yourself with your podcast and me and others, and those that are waking up, suddenly realizing actually it is time to turn the bus round or jump from
Or
this train.
it's like the life cycle of an empire. We're in the sort of death throes of
Yeah,
the end of the West, basically.
it cannot continue.
No, it's gluttonous, it's disgusting, and it's definitely run its course. And at the end of every empire, this the ambiguity of gender and everything is slipped in. Like it always is the same cycle, and we're definitely in the last throes of it. And I think more people could do with following suit, um, doing what you're doing and getting back to even growing a few things in their garden if they have a garden, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything to reconnect you with the real world, I think is important. And of course, it doesn't have to be growing. I mean, think of all the old crafts that people used to do. They used to use these amazing gifts that what, the skills that carpenters, metal workers, painters, all sort, there are so many things that are in the real world that give huge amounts of satisfaction and take time to master
Yeah,
that people really could get something out of. And again, mentioned in the old book, because there's not a lot of satisfaction about asking AI to print off a picture, which you've just said, oh, give me a picture with these three things in it, bang, it's instant. There's no satisfaction at all.
no, no, and instant gratification does things to your dopamine receptors. Do you know what I mean? It's intentional. It's all intentional, and like it's once that you know,
Mm.
whenever you discover that there's, say, for example, subliminal messages in movies, it doesn't mean you have to stop enjoying movies. You're just now aware that that's what's going on. You know,
Yes, absolutely. You look at them in a slightly different way.
you look at them in a slightly different way. Still take them for their entertainment value, but
Yeah,
understand that there's narrative, whatever behind it, and you can spot it a mile off, and that's fair enough. What do you have in store then for the rest of 2026 outside of the land?
I've got a few talks, events that we're going to. I am writing another book, but on a slightly different subject, which I don't think I'll have out this year. It'll probably be next year now because I'm very busy on the land.
Yeah,
And it will be a continuation. I mean, we've just bought, or we're in the process of buying a vintage 1950s tractor, which will be huge amount of fun
what sort
to
of
get.
tractor did you go for?
It's a Fordson Major
Okay,
from 1954. It's a diesel workhorse, I suppose. It's not in a cab like I mean, it's a lot of money for us, but it's not a lot of money. And farms these days wouldn't use these sort of things. But it's a lovely bit of kit. It enables us. We have a 50-yard track from the road to the land on a incline, and it's on clay. So you can imagine in the last 3 months, it's just been a one-way slide, and I can't get my van up there. And any deliveries that we get, it's got to either be taken up in a wheelbarrow, slewing away. So we figured what we need a tractor just to be able to pull things up, mow part of the grass to keep things under control, shift things around. We've got some tree stumps to pull out, a myriad of tasks that an old vintage nice tractor. And again, it's a vintage. It's part of the old way of life, rather than there's barely any electronics on it. It's all mechanics, and it can be fixed in the field with a spanner and a screwdriver, and I like that. I think that's what everyone should do. So I've got to now look for a Haynes manual if there is such a thing, so I can work out should something go wrong.
so just a couple of last questions for you. You say you enjoy reading a lot. What is one book that you would say is a must read for anybody, outside of your own, of course?
Um, that's interesting. I mean, there's one book that I would say for people who want to know about the conspiracy stuff, and that would be 180, which is by Greenwood Fergus O'Connor. That sort of gives you a good broad outline of what's going on. But outside of all of that, and I try to stop reading all those sort of books now because, yeah, I know what's going on. I don't need any more sort of stuff. I'm moving away. There are many books that I love. I'm reading more fiction now. I used to read a lot of factual, historical stuff. Trouble is, you don't even know if it's true anymore. And it kind of the conspiracy stuff has sort of ruined ruined my take on history. I used to like the stories of the Saxons against the Normans and all this sort of stuff. But now, yes, I'm reading a lot more fiction. But one book, there's a lovely book which will have no meaning to most people, but it's for me, it's set in late 1930s, 1940, which is a period of history that I absolutely identify with because you had manners, people dressed, they didn't overeat, they understood what food was. It was the sort of the end for me, the end period of the good life, and then on to where we've seen the
Assumption.
yeah, consumption and everything else. It's called London Belongs to Me. And what I love about it is not so much the plot, but it's the attention to the sort of detail of characters who lived in London at that period, bus tickets and jam sandwiches and the sort of tenancy renting and the rent collector coming. It's a sort of a nostalgic book for me. I didn't live in the 1940s, of course, but growing up, my parents had, and that was their references, which would constantly be coming down to me as I grew up. And it's just I just like it. It's by a chap called Norman Collins, who actually was working for the BBC and was responsible for Woman's Hour back in the day.
Okay.
So how extraordinary. But yeah, it's a lovely book. But of course, there are many other books far more important. But for me, it's a book I return to because of the observations of ordinary daily life, which I think is often missed out.
Yeah, yeah, we miss the nuance because of all the bigger picture. And in an ideal world, if people listened, what would be advice that you would give a young person, like who's just coming into adulthood and just starting out in life and has all this information at their fingertips and
Well, I would say switch off your phone, and I would say talk to your grandparents and listen to them. Don't spend too much time with people your own. I mean, obviously you've got your friends, but don't just limit your time with those people. Talk to people who are a bit older and just listen. Don't criticize, don't judge, just listen to their life story because I think so much of what we had in the past is still valuable today. Obviously, we don't want to go back where we don't have certain mod cons. They're useful. Let's take advantage of the technology to a degree, but let's not throw the baby out of the bathwater and say that everything was awful back in the old days, because clearly they had something. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today.
yeah. And was there any one person or one thing that particularly anchored you as a person throughout life, or
Um,
random question?
yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, it always comes to these, what one thing did something to you. Um, I suppose I'm quite a jolly, optimistic person, and I love old-fashioned comedy. So I grew up, so not necessarily one person that I've ever met as such, but I grew up with the old 19 reruns of the 1940s and 50s films with actors like Terry Thomas, Margaret Rutherford, the Carry On films, the early ones particularly, and that sort of sense of nonsense and silliness. And I don't think there's enough nonsense and silliness in this world. We're far too serious. We take things far too seriously. We can't laugh at ourselves. And I think, as a British man, the fact that we can laugh at ourselves. I mean, I alluded to 1940s where they was all very stiff upper lip, but at the same time, there were certain people who could just poke fun,
Yeah,
and I think we need more fun poking.
100%. And I know my face doesn't look like a fun poking face, but I can I can certainly have a laugh at myself. And I think more people
Uh,
could certainly do with just a wee bit more levity in their lives and
I agree.
not taking everything so seriously. And it's been fantastic having you on. I wanted to speak to you for quite a while. And the amazing thing is, had I have had a conversation with you 3 months ago, I would have been wanting to go down a conspiracy rabbit hole a bit, but it's been a refreshing conversation. So yeah, thank
Oh,
you very much.
fantastic. Well, thank you, Mark. It's been an absolute joy, and it's been nice to talk about all sorts of other things than the normal things I get asked.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Richard, and you have a fantastic evening and good luck with the land. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I certainly will. And you and yourself.
And thank you for watching the Belfast Bapcast.